about 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
You'll go through the countries again?
Well, starting with Iraq, then Syria and Lebanon, then Libya, then Somalia and Sudan, and then back to Iran. Truth is about the Middle East is, had there been no oil there, it would be like Africa. Nobody is threatening to intervene in Africa, and there's no question that the presence of patrol.
They're flushing another one of their minions down the toilet, Hosni Mubarak, to put out and to put into power Mohammed el-Baradei, who they admit is a United Nations George Soros minion, who's the former head of the IAEA at the UN, the Nuclear Weapons Regulatory Group. And I've got the whole breakdown on him. Director General, the International Atomic Energy Agency, New York Law School, CIA trained. I mean, his whole background is public. And he shows back up the week before all this starts in Egypt and starts going around saying, "I'm ready to be your leader." And it turns out the Egyptian military is bought and paid for by the U.S. and Israel. This is on record. And is basically standing down, unless they try to burn some of the museums, are standing down while the people run around and loot. And here's the London Telegraph. Egypt protest. America's secret backing for rebel leaders behind uprising. Continues. Egyptian opposition leader calls on Mubarak to leave today. And who is that? This is the new puppet, the UN puppet. Because there's one thing Mubarak hadn't done. He refuses to force sterilize people, and they've had UN population summits. He's been criticized. He refuses to sterilize and bring an abortion. Now, you better believe that el-Baradei will. So Mubarak loves to torture, kill, slaughter, total dictator. Our government's got its torture sites there, loves him, but he isn't good enough. He isn't good enough. He doesn't hate his people enough. And so Mohammed el-Baradei, the Pied Piper of Egyptian revolt, Paul Joseph Watson, that's from Friday, his report up there. And, of course, on Friday he also reported on the George Soros connection. But now Axelrod's bragging that el-Baradei is their man. We've got another report by the LRC blog, Egypt's Rose Revolution, similar to what happened in Georgia. There's another report here. Egypt is another Soros color revolution. Soros, of course, funded rebellions and takeovers all over Eastern Europe and into Central Asia on the belly of Russia. And it's just hard to believe until you look at the evidence and that it's just admitted that our government is so